So good day everyone. So I am the group 3 and my group mates are the following people. Guti Goldstein, Inkik Juliet, and Hanito Lexter, and Jimena Arjiboy. So our assigned topic is all about biodiversity and evolution. So my assigned topic is all about sympatric speciations because they are already discussed about biodiversity. So and now let's talk about how the evolutions talks about in the biodiversity. So sympatric speciations. So what comes to in your mind when you heard about sympatric? Okay, sympatric, it is the evolution of a new species from surviving ancestral species while both continue to inhabit the same geographic region. So speciations occurring without the presence of a physical barrier. So you might be wondering how one species can become two separate species even though they still live in the same area. So this can happen in a variety of ways. So due to the mutation, changes in allele frequency, behavior changes, and reproduction isolations. So considered a group of flies. So these are the examples. So you have consider a group of flies that are all the same species. So there are two sources of food for them to to choose. It's either red apples and green apples. At first, all of the flies feed I talks about at first all of the flies feed on the red apples, so they're able to eat on the red apples. But at some points, some of the flies begin to prefer to green apples. So there was a tendency that no matter how they be able to eat the green apples or the red apples, at the end of the day, still live in the same area. Like for example, due to mutation, so na yung mga posibilidad nga no matter how they be able to eat the green or the kwan, still same ra sila og wandering become separate species even though still live in the same area. So sympatric speciations occurs when there are no physical barriers, meaning walay mga physical like no touching involved. So preventing any members of a species from mating with another, and all members are in close proximity one another to another. So I'm able to give one example of you. So a possible example of symmetric speciations is the apple maggot. We already know about the apple or maggot, right? So when an insect that lays eggs inside the fruits of an apple, it's causing it root. So as the apple falls from the tree, meaning when the apple falls down and the maggot dig in the ground, so they already done laying the egg in the and for example the insect lays in an egg when the apple falls down in the tree. So there's a possibility that the maggot dig in the ground. So before emerging as the several months later, so after na dig naman to in the ground, so the apple maggot originally laid in eggs in the fruit of a relative of the apple. That's all about. I already done discussing the evolutions of sympatric speciations, and now let's move on and let's tackle about adaptations. So adaptation is under the biodiversity and evolution. So adaptations. So adaptations, it is the structures of behaviors that increase the livelihood or fitness of an individual. So the adjustment of organism to their environment in order to improve their chance its survival in that environment. So what are the causes of the adaptations? So adaptations are the results of the evolution. So na-evolve naman to siya, meaning mo-adapt na po siya or resulta siya sa evolution. So evolutions is a change in a species over long periods of time. Dili lang ni siya 2 months, not 3 months, but a long period of time. About siya mga 20th century like that. So adaptations usually occur, become a gene mutates or changes by accident. So some mutations can help or animal or plants to survive better than others in a species without the mutation. Well, adapted organisms can cope with the different aspects of their environment. For example, the temperature. Yeah, we cannot deny the fact that if that dog live, yeah, we only like Philippine dog, if that dog live in the cold temperature, that there was a tendency that dog will no live in a longer periods of time. So there was a possibility that he or she might dead. So every type of organism needs a special place, specific place to survive and reproduce properly. Its environment is called a habitat. It is where all animals live where it's supposed to be. So, for example, that animals live in that kind of places. So that might be a specific place to survive, di ba? Like for example, we can put that what will be the most specific example for this. The chameleon. We already know that the chameleon animals, there might be a changes in the color according to the environment. Like for example, warm weather. So the chameleon color must possibly be changes when it's time to hot temperature. Then the color of the chameleon will be turned into gray or dark gray. Yeah. So there are many things that the animal's habitat affects its survival. It's where it is found. All living things has a specific place and needs to survive. There are different types of animals that can adapt to different conditions and environment, but only for a short period of time. Mostly, all animals have to stay in their own habitat to survive. Kay dili ba, not all the animals will stay in that kind of place. Maybe that animals will live in the according to their temperature. Like for example, ang fish, of course, fish live in the water. So pag imo na siyang, when you put that fish in the what we call this, pag imo na siyang ibutang sa babaw, there was a tendency nga mamatay siya kay because they need water. Just for like human. So dili jud ka pwede mo stay in the water, like for in the sea water, mato ka dito maglangoy-langoy. So there was a time nga you need to going to what we call this, kanang moangat ka sa babaw kay there was a possibility that you will already matay ka, di ba? So for example, cactus. Have you ever nakakita mo cactus? So through just the water loss, if the cactus it leaves thick, so pag manginit na siya, so there was a tendency nga the leaves of the cactus will no longer grow. So naay possibility nga malaya siya. So if magsige siya gulan pod, na po siya tendency nga mamatay. So for example, facts, siba, we can really man siya makita diri especially in the Philippines temperature. Also, yeah, makita natin na siya in the cold regions. So, for example, so the facts, of course, if you put the facts in the warm region, so there possible that mudako ang ilang dalungan and their ikog. So ilang body surface mo lahi. So munay kalagmitan nga mabalaan nimo nga inda mapag once nga facts, well, their long airs were inana, so meaning na siya sa warm region. So kinahanglan na siyang ibalik dito sa or put in the cold region. So for example, another example, as you can see the PowerPoint presentations, the camel. So we all know that living in the desert climate, so once nga mas initan na siya maayo, so mutaas ng ilang mga mata against the thirst kay because of kuana siya katungod sa kauhaw nila. So ang ilang fat storage in their hump where mudako siya, mugame siya, and then ang ilang dalunggan muto manggawas ang ilahang mga buhok. And I know for sure that you don't that's all the example of the adaptation. So there are all living things na suppress has a specific place and needs to survive. So, there are different types of animals that can adapt different conditions that environment, but only for short periods of times. Mostly, all animals have to stay in their own habitat to survive. That's all. Thank you.